Hello, Miss Solar. I made a medieval project about medieval castles. So I actually built a medieval castle in Minecraft. Now I want to go around the castle while talking about it. Now, if what they actually, how they made or what they used to make castles was before 1066 they used wood and timber, but after 1066 they started using stone, and they started using bricks and slate and limestone and others. And now that we know what they're made of, let's see what kind of castles there were. There was three types of castles. There was keeps, moat and baileys, and century castles. Keeps were really large castles that were usually rectangular or shell shaped, and they usually had the entrance on the second floor. And then there was moat and baileys, which were castles on top of dirt hills with a fence around the dirt hill and the castle. And then there's also century castles, which were a castle in the middle surrounded by different type of walls. And now, before we get into the castle, let's see what's actually on the outside of the castle. What they had was walls, but they called these curtain walls, and they were usually made of stone and they were 7 feet. They were 7 feet thick, and usually up to like 40 feet tall. On the top of these, they had things called merlins. This is the little things that you see at the top, and these are used for guarding and protecting where they shoot out of. But also at the bottom, they would have little slits in the walls where you would be able to shoot arrows from. And the enemy on the outside wouldn't really be able to shoot through because they're so tiny. And now that we're done talking about the outside of the wall, let's talk about the next thing you'd really see. The thing you would actually walk in on. Now, they have two things here. They have the drawbridge and the gatehouse. Now, the drawbridge would usually be over a moat or a ditch, but I didn't make that. So the drawbridge was, you could usually pull it up and down, and it would be used to close and make sure you know who are coming in and to keep people out. And then the gatehouse would usually be two towers with sometimes like a bridge across where the gate would actually be through. Now this is where guards would stay to watch out to see who's going through and to monitor who's coming in and out, who's coming in and going out. After you walk in, there's the first three things you see. The things you see is the stables, the wells, the great hall, the chapel, the library, and the keep. Now they had stables back here, and back then horses were signs of wealth, and they had a well where they would get water, all your necessary water for everything you need. Next, you would have back then castles were also used as economic centers where you'd be able to trade and buy different things. And in through here is the Great Hall where the king would eat, and he would have important parties with other important people. And then we have the chapel where everyone would pray to come in and pray, because back then you had to be Catholic. And then they had the library where they would have different rules. They would have the rule books, and they would have books about previous events that happened. And then lastly, we have the keep. Now the keep would be on the entrance would be on the second floor of the keep. And the first thing you have is the disarming room, because you would have to disarm yourself before you actually go in. And then they have the guards room where the guards would stay with all their weapons to get ready to get out. So that's why they'd be close to the entrance. Then we have the kitchen where you would cook for everyone. And they would have spiral cases. And now spiral cases, they had it so that it was easier to see, so it would be harder for the enemy to come in. Now, back here we have the basement where we have a storage and a well. And through here we have a dungeon where you keep all the bad people, or the criminals. And then we have where the toilet is. And back then they didn't have toilets like this. All they had was just a hole. And then through here we have a dining room where the king would eat. the lord or king would eat, or other people. And then last floor we have the bedrooms. So this is where the lord's chamber would be, where the lord would sleep and live in. And then we have other rooms where other important people would live and sleep in. Then at the top we have where the guards would stand by and watch, because actually the keep would be the last defense for a castle if it had been raided. And so how do they make these castles? Now that we've done all this, how do they actually make these? Now they use mostly manpower and wagons to make it, and they would have people chisel them out. They would have people cut them out with chisels. And these things would cost a lot, but there's no real answer to how much it would cost, because castles depend. The cost varies depending on the size and how many people are working on it, and how many people we hire. And these things were really big, and because of that, they took a pretty long time to make. Now, depending on how much people you have working on them, and depending on the size, actually, it would take from 2 to 10 years to build. And that's kind of all of this castle. And that's kind of all you really need to know about medieval castles. They take a pretty long time to build, depending on how big they are. They have all the necessary things to live in, and they have trade centers, and they have chapels, they have dining rooms, they have libraries, and they have a main source to live in. And that was my project for medieval castles. Thank you for listening, Miss Lawler.